Welcome to episode 22 of The Chess Angle. This is our first interview format for season 2, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome a good friend of mine, Brian Caron. Brian grew up in Merrick here on Long Island and discovered chess at about 16 years of age in the mid-'80s. Around 1997, Brian started to teach chess, thinking it would be good as a part-time job. But it quickly took off, and he's been consistently teaching chess, often 7 days a week. As a player, he's been around 2100 for a few decades and has the FIDE Candidate Master title. He did have the opportunity to play against a young Nakamura and Fabiano Caruana right here on Long Island. Brian considers himself more of a chess fan than a player. He's passionate about chess history and studies more for entertainment than improvement. He's one of the most active teachers in the country, and that's with virtually no advertising and just referrals. Personally, Brian is a good friend and has been a great sounding board for me as director of a chess club. I'll often bounce ideas off Brian, and his input is always invaluable. So, Brian, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Neil? I'm really
Good.
excited to be on this. I've been enjoying your podcast, so it's nice. The modern age, you could listen to something on the radio, and then all of a sudden you're a guest. So I'm happy.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. Cool. No, I'm glad to have you on. I mean, you were one of the first people that I was going to have on when I was, thinking about having guests. I mean, this started as kind of a monologue type thing. And I said, I got to have Brian on at some point. So
No, I'm flattered.
yeah, no, thank you. Definitely. So just to break the ice a little bit, you're a big basketball fan. Like, you're really into the NBA, which is kind of cool. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, how that started.
Yeah, basketball and boxing are the two sports I follow. I do not follow any like baseball, football. I don't follow them all because I know if I start following them, I'll get really like I'm either doing it, all out or not doing it at all. Basketball, it's so it started when I was a kid. Here's a funny story. When I was in, I guess it was elementary school or around there, my dad was signing people up for was signing me up for the basketball league. And there was a sort of more advanced league and a lesser advanced league. And I was terrible at basketball, but I said to my dad, "Oh, I want to be in this more advanced group." And he's thinking, why do you want to be in that more advanced group? And we said, because my friend Johnny Halpern's in it, and if we go on his team, we're going to win the league. Because Johnny Halpern, he lived around the block, and he'd always be playing basketball. He was really good. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We played in the league that year. I was the worst player on the team. Generally, what would happen is I would meet with the other worst player on the other team, and we'd just chat. And then every once in a while, someone would throw us a ball. We'd get really scared and just toss it away as quickly as possible to someone else. And normally that was Johnny Hopper, and he would run in, score. He went on to play for Cornell University, very, very good basketball player. And then we won this huge trophy because we won the whole league. So from middle school on, I had this huge trophy in my room for basketball. Even though I was like the worst player, people would come in and say, "Wow, you're pretty good at basketball." I'm like, "Yep." But I didn't really follow basketball at all until I went to Syracuse University. And then that year we went to the national championship. And my roommate really got me into basketball, Keith Button. He was a big Celtic fan back then. And so since then, I followed it. Mostly I don't watch a lot of games, just during the playoffs and the finals, but I'm always reading about it or listening to podcasts. I almost consider it like a soap opera, just seeing what's going on in different teams. There's all these characters. But I've never felt I obviously, know quite a bit from doing what I've just mentioned, but I still never felt like an expert on it, like I am, like I can consider myself a chess or even boxing to some extent. But I love it, And actually, the funny thing is, I'm a big Jordan fan. When in the '90s, I was a big Nick fan, and I hated Jordan. But as time went on, I grew to respect him more and more. And now it just really bothers me when I hear people who just have no clue about, how good he was. So I think that's, I get in all these ridiculous debates and stuff. But yeah, I like basketball.
It's funny you mentioned Jordan and the debates, because I actually was going to ask you. I have a feeling based on what you said that I know what you're going to say, but we agree that this whole Jordan-LeBron debate is utter nonsense, right?
Absolutely.
Jordan was the best. I mean, his competitive nature, just his talent is, I mean, just, I was in high school in the 80s and when the NBA was like, everybody watched the NBA, even if you weren't an NBA fan. And, but when people now talk about the possibility that there can even be a comparison between those two, we agree that that's nonsense, right?
Yeah, if they just said LeBron's a really great player and he's one of the best ever and all these other things, I'd be like, fine. But yeah, the other problem is people watch YouTube clips. So now you could take lots of players and just watch YouTube clips on them, and they'll look really great. So you could take a player who's not a Jordan or a LeBron, and if you watch the YouTube clips on him, they'll look like amazing. But what people don't realize is Jordan was doing this like every play, every game. Okay, of course he had some bad, moments, but for the most part, it was just shocking how good he was, and just watching him evolve. Another thing I see a lot of people like make it sound like if he didn't have Scottie Pippen, he wouldn't have been nearly as great and stuff. Now, from living in those times, if you were asked to name like the top superstars in the NBA back then, up until the end, towards the end of Jordan's career, most people wouldn't mention Scottie Pippen. They would have said he's a very good player, but they would have been mentioning Jordan, and Magic, and Bird, and Karl Malone, all these other guys. I mean, Scottie was great. I don't want to take anything away from him, but he's not as essential to Jordan as people make it out today. I mean, I do think he needed someone else, and Scottie definitely complimented him well. But anyway, we can go on and on about that.
Right. No, definitely. But Jordan is, I mean, LeBron is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but Jordan is, he's
they
just
don't
one.
get it. If they lived through the times, I mean, I'm sure we could find some people who lived through the times who are still like, oh, LeBron's better than Jordan, but it'd be very, very tiny minority. But the young people didn't see him. That's recency bias. They're just like, they go to the stats. Jordan retired many years in his career. He didn't come in from high school. So obviously his stats aren't going to be as great as LeBron's. But, the main thing is when I would watch Jordan play, if his team was down by like, say, 6 points with 2 minutes to go, I'd be like, oh, the Bulls are going to win. It wouldn't even enter my mind.
Yep.
Of course, with LeBron, it's the reverse of anything,
Right. So now, did you see The Last Dance on Netflix?
Sure.
For those of you who don't know what that is, even if you're not a basketball fan or a sports fan, there's a documentary on Netflix about the Bulls and their, the huge run they had from like the late 80s and the early 90s. It's called The Last Dance. It's on Netflix. It's mesmerizing.
Absolutely.
Even if you're not a basketball fan, you watch this thing and you can't stop. It's just an unbelievable documentary if you want to check it out.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, I think. I mean, even, studying Jordan, whether in film or book, you learn a lot about competitiveness. So it does relate to chess a little bit, obviously, we're not all Michael Jordans at chess, but definitely some of his competitiveness is good. Although there's other ways to do it also. You don't have to necessarily be exactly like him.
Let's turn this to chess. Now, I know you're very active on Facebook, and I know you've spoken about this before, but it's kind of an important phenomenon that's happening. So I wanted to mention it again. You have a chess book collectors page on Facebook. It's a group. It's a group, not a page, right? It's a group.
Yeah, it's a group.
It's a Facebook group, but it's doing very well. Your numbers are amazing, and you've got some famous people on there. So maybe you could tell us about this group.
Yeah, it's 50,000 people, and then I have another group, FIDE World Championship 2023, which is something like 71,000. And honestly, all the things I put work into and tried in my life, and some went well, some didn't, whatever. This I didn't have to put a lot of work into. It sounds like, oh, look at that guy. He must have really worked hard to make this group. I was actually, I think if I remember correctly, it was during the finals or a playoff game. It was during a commercial, and I do collect chess books. And I said, it would be nice to create a group. Why not do that? And I thought it would be a couple of my friends that I know from the chess book community. And honestly, if that's all it was, I'd be fine. There were like 10 of my friends. And we'd talk about it, and that'd be great. Well, it just grew exponentially. It still grows. And it has become like, I think, a small part of the chess culture. They're always mentioning it on podcasts, and the people in the group, it's I think one of the things, the only thing I do, and the members are actually a big help in this also, because this is the other thing with the membership there. In a lot of groups, you go on Facebook, you have all these trolls and, kind of people insulting everyone and stuff like that. I think the people who are into chess books let's face it, a lot of them are pretty smart, mature people. Why would you be selling to chess books? It just attracts people like that. And it has not required a lot of moderating or anything. They're mostly pretty good people that get along, and their IQ level for chess is very, very high, which actually brings me up to another point that I wanted to make before I forget. So, now I know a lot of these people in the chess book collectors group, and I came up with this theory that there's people who are into chess, and some lean more to playing, and some lean more to studying. So obviously, they both groups do both to some extent, but you'll have people in this group who obviously know a ton about chess. I have a friend in the group. I don't even think he made expert. I think he was maybe at his peak, the high 1900s. And you name a chess book, he'll tell you all about it. And he's very smart, very insightful. He clearly knows a heck of a lot about chess, and if you compare him and just say, well, he's 1950 and he only knows what a 1950 knows, whatever that is, you can be way off because, maybe for whatever reason his playing strength isn't stronger, but he definitely understands the stuff. And there's a lot of people like that in the chess group. So, I started to think, well, what is going on here? And, and then I know other people, as some of them go to your club, where they barely ever study. I had a good friend who made national master, and he doesn't study much at all. We work together a lot, and he doesn't really like to read chess books too much. He does it to the extent he has to if he thinks it'll help his results. So, and I think part of the reason for this is there's only so much time in the day. So I know, speaking for myself, if I play in one of your tournaments, I feel, I got to be doing stuff to be ready for that tournament, So if if I am reading stuff, it's going to be directly related, maybe an opening that I'm planning on playing, or, whatever. When I play on the computer, it's going to be very serious games that I look over carefully. I'm going to be in prepare for tournament mode because I know when I go down on Thursday, I'll be playing against someone who wants to beat me. And I one of the things I don't like about it, again, because I'm more a studier than a player, is now, kind of the fun type study that I normally do, I'm just not going to be doing as much. Now you could argue maybe I shouldn't do that, but it's very hard to, like, if I know I'm going to play someone who's playing, say, the French defense, right? And I'm reading some book about Capablanca and Arai Lopez, I'm going to be like, what am I doing here? So yeah, I don't think people, I think I've never seen anyone talk about this, but the more I think about it, the more there's a clear level. And there's one other point. A lot of the people's in the group and the studier group, quote unquote, no one really necessarily knows them. Some of them might have played, some of them might not have even played. Whereas the player group, particularly if they've made master or higher, everyone knows them. So it's common to think everyone's just a player, but there's a huge part of chess of people who aren't that interested in playing, but they still love chess. They love going through games and puzzles and this and that, but they're not well represented because, if you're just at home studying, again, a Capablanca game or whatever, you're not going out telling everyone, hey, I'm studying Capablanca's book. So, yeah, I don't think that's mentioned as much, but I do think there's two clear categories. You can name me people, I'll be like, that guy's more a player, that guy's more a studier. And they're both, I'm not putting down either group. They're both fine. Although I will say there is a funny thing. I know some people, like if I say, well, I'm really not playing much anymore, but I do study, they'll go, why do you study, if you're not, if you're not playing, or, what's the point? And, so I can see their attitude, but then I can also see the reverse. It's like, well, if you're not Magnus Carlsen, or you're not going to be a top 10, top 20 grandmaster, why are you playing? What's the big deal of you improving? You're not going to, so you can go either way. But the main thing is, if you're enjoying this, like, there's so many different ways to pursue chess. As long as you're enjoying yourself and getting something out of it, if you're not some super grandmaster, then, you're doing the right thing.
So you feel tournament play, it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Exactly. I think the most important thing, whatever you do in chess, again, unless it's, you're trying to be a super grandmaster or be Magnus Carlsen, unless you have some real, serious reason, you should not be, the most important thing is you're enjoying yourself. And then also there's a lot of character building things and, all the benefits of chess. And, it's good if you're doing things like that. And there are certain things you'll get from playing in tournaments that you'll never get from reading a chess book. So it depends what you're trying to build up. I mean, the level of focus, learning from losses, dealing with losses, things like that, you don't get from a book. But on the other hand, you can get plenty from a book. You can still solve puzzles and try to guess the moves of grandmaster games, and all sorts of things that you wouldn't get from a regular non-chess book. So yeah, it depends what you're looking for chess, and also where you want to invest your time. Because I shouldn't say I'm not interested in playing. It's that I have only so much time in the day. And again, if I commit to your tournament, beyond the 3 hours or whatever it is that I'm going to be playing a week, it's whenever I do chess, I'm going to be thinking, all right, I'm going to be playing on Thursday. I should be doing something that helps that. So it feels more, carries over for the week. And because of that, even though I really don't mind it, I don't mind the playing. It's like, I think I'll just, study or whatever. It's not like an actual plan. Like I'm not going to play. But if I am playing, I am studying whatever I want, as well as, it happens to be my job is chess. At some point, I'm like, all right, something has to go. It's just too much.
I think also a lot of hobbyists or studiers, people who don't really play in tournaments but love the game, they're sometimes, or they seem to be happier and they enjoy the game more like aesthetically than a lot of sort of, diehard tournament players, because,
Absolutely,
you get this obsession with rating. And I think we all go through it to a certain extent, those of us who play regularly. But people who really aren't concerned about rating in tournaments, they just love the game. They love studying the game. As I said, a lot of them, I think they're just happier in general with the game itself than some of these tournament players.
Absolutely. I think wanting to improve, leads to worrying about losing and things like that. And then it does ruin the experience. And it's no coincidence, people sometimes, like when they get right around 2000 or right around 2200, I won't speak above that too much, but I'm sure it goes on there too. That's exactly when they're having a lot of problems. They go into slumps and stuff because the tension builds up. So yeah, absolutely. Richard Rapport, I think he's number 5 in the world now. He was saying that. He just said recently in an interview a couple of weeks ago, the people who, I really envy the people who just are amateurs and just enjoy chess. It's like when you listen to Rapport in an interview, it sounds like he hates playing. He says his favorite part of a tournament was when it's over. But the other funny thing is, and I don't know if this happens with you, when I do have a bad tournament, like sometimes I would be in a slump or something. At a certain point, I'm just kind of like, man, I'm really bad, And then at that point, I'm not even thinking about improving. I'm not even thinking, like I'm almost expecting to lose in place. And that's exactly when I have my best tournaments. That's exactly, like all of a sudden everything turns around. It's really weird. Did you ever find anything like that?
Absolutely. It's like a sports psychology thing. There's probably a name for it, which we're not going to take the time to Google right now. But basically, you're so relaxed and you don't put this pressure on yourself that you actually do well. If you've read, I'm going to do a review at some point on a book called The 7 Deadly Chess Sins.
Oh, sure. Great book.
That's kind of an advanced chess psychology book. I did a review on Chess for Tigers, which is fantastic. That's one book that everybody should read on chess psychology. If you're a beginner or if you're rated 2000, you can read that book. But very briefly, I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler of a future episode, but that's okay. He talks about in the 7 Deadly Chess Sins about having gumption, enthusiasm. He defines it as enthusiasm, composure, practicality, where you're not focused on the result. I think he calls it wanting. I think that's the sin.
Yeah, I think I read it so long ago. I think something like that.
Yeah, and he basically says a lot of times you're so focused on the result that you're not enjoying the process. You just want the win, and then that's when the mistakes happen. It's like you said, you put this pressure on yourself. You're playing a lower rated player. I need to beat this guy, and the low rated player is doing well, and then you start to force things rather than just enjoy the contest and just play, worry about good moves, and the result will come.
Exactly.
Easier said than done, but that when you spoke about that, that's kind of what I was thinking of.
That's exactly the right mind, for me at least, the right mindset. But as you said, it's easier said than done. Just because I know it's the right mindset, it doesn't necessarily happen. I find it's I once used to play a guy whose handle on the computer was show me. And that actually, I think, is the right attitude, at least for me. If I go to a tournament, and particularly if I'm playing a higher rated player, I think the best attitude is like, okay, I consider myself a pretty good chess player. Why is this guy higher rated than me? Why is he 200 points? What's he doing that I'm not doing? And then by doing that, I want to play my best because I want to see what I'm doing wrong. And often I find I play better than that's, to the extent I do score an upset, it would be in that situation. But also, it'll be like, as you should do in chess with tournaments, it'll be a more instructive game as long as you play your best. And to play your best, you shouldn't be concerned about losing. You should just be like, show me. Okay, you're 2400 or whatever you are. Okay, show me. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna use all my abilities, and then if you beat me, I'll try to figure out why.
Yeah, they call it loss aversion. It's
Mm-hmm.
common among even professionals. Loss aversion is the idea that the fear of losing or the pain of losing is worse than the thrill of winning.
Yeah,
Right.
Topalov. He was once on the cover of New in Chess, and he said something like, "I became the number one player in the world when I stopped caring about losing." And I actually wrote, I forget who I talked to. I think it was Edward Winter, because I remember Lasker saying something like this. I distinctly remember Lasker saying something about not fearing loss, but I've never been able to find that quote. And Winter didn't know it either. So I don't know. I'm sure it's out there, but I've never been able to find it. But in any case, yeah, Topalov definitely said it.
No, that's great stuff. Yeah, you can't play with the fear of losing. You can't play not to lose, right? What's that line
Exactly.
from? I think it was from Searching for Bobby Fischer, who's the guy from The Matrix, who played the coach. What's
Oh,
his name?
Ben Kingsley. Wait, there's Ben
No,
Kingsley
Ben
played
Kingsley
Bruce,
played
Bruce
Pandolfini. The
Feeney.
guy who played the street, who he was
Oh,
coaching
I
him
know who
on.
you're talking about. Lawrence Fishburne, of course.
Lawrence Fishburne, right?
Right, right.
He
Yeah.
goes, "You're playing not to lose. You're playing not to lose," right? Isn't that a line from that movie?
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. So,
This is a good transition to something I'm really excited to ask you about. And I haven't talked to many people about it, but I know you know everything about TD and ratings and things like that. And this directly relates to my norm-based rating system. So
okay.
let me explain it to you. So first off, I want to be clear. I have no expectation of this ever happening. I'm not trying to create a grassroots movement. Everyone likes the ratings as they are, and that's fine.
Hang on, Brian.
Um,
I'm sorry to jump in. I just so the listeners know. So you're now going to speak about your belief or your theory about a USCF rating system that's
mhm,
based on norms
exactly.
rather than individual games. Am I correct?
Yes, because it completely relates to what we were just talking about.
Okay, lay it on me.
So let me explain it to you. So, and again, it's if I could make this happen, like, by pushing a button or something, it's perfect for me. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily advocating a change or expect anything to happen. But this is the thing. So you can go down and play some chess game. You might even be playing a great game. And as happens to all of us, all of a sudden you overlook like one move and boom, your opponent might have even been played terrible. And boom, you lose the game. And not only that, if your opponent's significantly lower rated, you lose like a zillion points. Like, it's like I might have worked months to gain these points. And now in one move, I lose it all. It's like brutal, right? And we all have horror stories like that. So my system's designed to get around that because this is the thing. Based on that, at least speaking for myself, it's not true of everyone. There's some people who will go and play no matter what's going on. But that's another reason why I don't play as much. I'll be exhausted. I'll have worked all day. And I'm like, gee, Neil runs a great club and, I should really go there and play. But I'll be like, I'm tired. I'm going to go there and then I might just, blunder a bishop to someone or something. So it works against me wanting to play. And I think that's true of a lot of people. Or you could have someone who hasn't played in a while. Now, my rating is generally pretty consistent because I'm always studying. You can look me up online. I won't play for years or months or whatever it is, and I generally get pretty consistent results. So I'm pretty confident that I can handle my rating. But the main point I was saying, no, there are a lot of people who maybe have been completely out of chess. They haven't studied or anything. They might have a reasonable rating. And then they're like, if I go back to Neil's club or, I don't want to pick on your club, any club, obviously. I'm just not ready for it. I'm just going to get slammed. And what's the point? Then I lose like a zillion points. And why did I go down? All right, so that's what my system's designed to kind of guard against. And this is how it would work. No one would have a rating of, say, like 2052 or these little numbers, because no one really, most of the time, people, it's like that guy's an expert, So if he's 2000 or 2100, everyone's like, he's an expert, The other guy is a master, They don't even pay much attention to the exact classifications of A, B, C. I mean, I guess A players get their recognition some, but at a certain point, people stop even knowing what's what. Okay, so for the purpose of calculation, if you're an expert norm, you're an expert, you're going to be calculated as 2000, right? I mean, we could get into details. Some people might argue maybe an expert should be calculated as 2100, or those are all details that would be worked out. But let's say expert, when we do the rating calculation, then the tournament, he counts as a 2000, and so on, 2200 for national master, and so on down the list. Okay, so you have a person playing a tournament, and what's going to happen is one of three things. They're either going to play below their rating category, right? They're going to play at their rating category, and they're going to play above their rating category. Most of the time, they're going to play at their rating category, unless they're underrated or overrated, right? All right, so now if you go down there and you perform at your rating category, then you're going to get the norm for that rating category at the end of the tournament. You'll perform if you're an expert, like an expert or whatever it is. And no harm done. Like, you're not going to get killed in ratings or anything. Even if you blundered that bishop to someone much lower rated. And then, of course, the other thing that could happen, though, is you could form above or below. So again, these details could be worked out, but the way I would have it, something like if you get 3 norms below your rating category, before you get anything higher than your rating category, you should drop a level. And the same thing in reverse. If you get 3 norms above your rating category, without getting anything below, you should move up a norm. And the reason I feel this is much better is that if you drop, you really deserved it. You're not going to fool yourself. You're like, hey, I played in 3 tournaments. I did below. I got to work on my chess. It's not like some freak thing where you just weren't paying attention and again, like blundered a bishop. So I think more people would be willing to play because that situation wouldn't happen. They'd say, okay, I'm going to go down to Neil's club and, I'm probably going to perform up to my rating. Maybe I'll win a prize or maybe I won't, but I'm not going to lose a ton of points just because I'm tired working all day. And at the same time, hopefully if you feel you're better, maybe you'll even get a little bit better and move up, But if the worst happens, okay, you deserve it. So that's my norm-based rating system.
I like it. Now, you touched on a couple of things that have always bugged me about the rating system. You certainly articulated it very well. I think that's fascinating because one of the things I want to touch upon 2 things. The first thing is I'm just laughing about playing after a full day of work.
Sure.
I understand that. So I pretty much play knowing that at the club, I'm never going to be at 100% because it's not going to work. You work, you have home responsibilities, you go there. It's not like I can do breathing exercises before I go to the club and do a little warm up and review an opening. And, I pretty much am working, coming home, doing my thing, and then I'm flipping a switch and boom. So that's part of the reason why I try to look for these hacks. I play the London system as white because I can just kind of go into it and it's a good opening. And in addition to all that, I'm also directing as well.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
I'm probably going to do a whole episode on playing and directing because a lot of people have made comments to me like, I don't know how you do both. I couldn't do
I don't either, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get that all the time, but so I understand that point. But the other thing, even more important about what you explained, are those anomalous losses. For example, you'll get kids at the club where their ratings are not catching up to their strength. Yep. So you're playing somebody who's listed as quote unquote 1,000, but he's really maybe 1,600, 1,700 or higher. And then you draw or lose the game. Maybe you're not having the best night either. But if you're not having the best night and your opponent is a true 1,200, you'll still be okay. But let's say they're really 1,800 and the rating hasn't caught up yet. Like you said, you lose 30 points. That's an issue. If this is only happening occasionally, if you're basically doing well and you have that one bad night, for your rating to take a 30-point hit for that one anomalous loss, And it's kind of what you said. I've always said, okay, fine. Maybe if that happens, knock off 12 or 15 points. And then if it happens again within a month or so or a short amount of time, then you can be more punitive with the ratings. But I kind of
Right.
like what you said. It goes, your thing is more about a cumulative performance, like an overall. It looks for trends rather than individual games.
Exactly.
So I like what you're saying, but like you said, for some reason, I don't really think,
It'll never
because
happen.
yeah, they're so steeped in tradition
Hmm.
that, well, it's the same thing, like with the random pairings, and all those
Yeah,
variations.
it's very similar. Yeah,
A
because I
lot
like
of
that too.
people, I mean, this is just my opinion. A lot of people are against change, not because there's something inherently wrong with what's being proposed, but it's simply that they just don't want to change,
I
right?
do think if you could push a button and have this norm-based system in, again, I don't think it'll ever happen. I do think many more people would play because there wouldn't be as much risk. There'd be every reason to go play, and why not? You might have some guy retired for 20 years. They'll be like, oh yeah, well, I'll go. Why not?
I think it's fascinating. All right, norm-based rating system. You heard it here on the Chess Angle. Brian Karen,
And I
there
do,
he
by the
is.
way, like people could listen to the podcast, but I do like the rating system that you use also because, that's the other thing. If I know I'm playing in your tournament, or I keep saying your tournament, it could be any tournament, obviously. Um, but I know that I'm going to be playing, say, Tim Morabli, who you had, or it could be anyone. I'm like, okay, I got to prepare for him because he might be preparing for me, and even if he isn't, I know what Tim plays. Yeah, and then that leads to a whole other thing. So with your rating system, okay, it is true at a certain point you kind of know, if you're leading the tournament that there's another leader, but it does cut out a lot of that because I'd rather that I don't know I'm playing Tim and he doesn't know he's playing
Oh,
me.
you're talking about not the rating, the random pairings,
Your
you
random
mean?
parents, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd rather
right.
I have no idea I'm playing him. He has no idea he's playing me, or any player. Also, I'm in some of these databases. So some people they could prepare for me. Although, a little warning to those people, I often fix my openings or play stuff different. But in any case, I do know cases where people prepared for me, and they should. Nothing wrong with that. But I'd rather neither of us knew, and we just go down and play. But if I know I'm going to be playing someone, I will be. That's another warning. I will probably be preparing for you, because I just feel a responsibility. If I know I'm playing Joe Felber, I'm going to look over the Carol Khan.
Right. Yeah, well, some guys, myself included, that what they're going to play. But it's
But
funny.
I might not know I'm playing them.
Right, right, right. But at the amateur level, even if I find for a lot of players, even if they know what you're going to play and they say, "Oh, I prepared," it doesn't always make a
Oh, well,
difference.
that's the other thing. And you touched on this I think in a podcast too. Even though everything I just said is true, I do not believe it really helps my results. Like, if I start preparing again for someone like Tim, and this has happened, I'll be like, you just get more and more like, oh, I didn't cover this variation, I didn't cover that variation. And next thing you know, you're working on it and you're getting all confused. And then by the time you sit down, you spend hours on different openings he might play. He may go into it, he may not. But you've already wasted all this energy. And in the end, it generally doesn't really make much of a difference. At the end, you probably get like, if you did your homework, equal, better, whatever, but the game's going to come down to something else. There's nothing to do with it. So I know, on a like a meta level that I shouldn't, in some ways, I really shouldn't prepare. But on the other hand, again, if I know I'm playing Joe Felber or Neil Bellin, he plays in London, if I know for a fact I'm going to play you, well, how am I not going to look over to London if I have time to study chess? I mean, obviously. So, and of course, other people will be looking me up in the databases and playing against what I play. And, that's how it works. But it's better with your system that happens less often. Because if I know that I might play one of four people, I don't have time to prepare for all that.
Right. I mean, for me, this is my opinion. The idea of opening preparation at the amateur level is just it's a waste of time, because what happens
Yeah.
is you're then hoping that your opponent is going to go in that direction, and if he springs something else on you, you end up getting frustrated, and that can affect your play. Whereas if you just keep an open mind and say, these are the openings I'm going to play, you're better off. I mean, because I used to get into
Absolutely.
that. I used to, oh, I'm going to prepare. He's going to play this. Then he would play something else, and you'd be like, because then you get it. Then it's almost like hope chess. You hope he does this. You hope he
And
does
even if
that.
they play what you're expecting, it's You still got to play. If
Right.
they're a decent player, you're not winning a rook, on move 10,
Yeah.
because of your preparation.
Right.
They're going to have some position. It might even be a worse position, but it'll be a worse position that they'll know how to play because they know their opening. And then it's like, all right, so yeah, I agree. The opening preparation. Also, another thing I'll mention, I read a lot of New in Chess where they have the very top players, writing about their games. It's very rare that I'm going through a game in there and the grandmaster could be Nish Giri, who's like well known for his preparation. All these top grandmasters. By the time move 8 to 12 comes along, they're saying, yeah, I didn't, I don't know this position, or here I was out of book. Like the myth is that it goes on and on and on. There are variations like that. If you have like a Maxime Legrave playing a Caruana and they're in an Adorf Sicilian, yeah, it might go on for a long time. But generally, I don't even see it at the top level. Normally because it's just too much to know.
Absolutely. So now let's kind of go in a different direction. I've mentioned on the podcast a number of times the influx of internet players, these quote unquote internet players. They're learning how to play on the internet
Mm-hmm.
rather than like you and I, we learned from books, a lot of over the board games. And then sort of later on, although Brian, maybe you not so much because I know you were involved in computers early on, but even still,
Yeah,
you still learned a lot from books
sure, sure.
in the beginning, as did I. And then adding computers and things like that was sort of a later in life type of thing, or later in your chess career type of thing. But now you have players who are learning to play online who aren't really reading chess books. And some of them are getting
Very good.
pretty good fast. Like you would think the opposite. Now, in some cases, their preparation and their sort of basics of chess fundamentals is a little desultory and a little choppy.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, you could argue that you don't even need to up a chess book anymore because even if you're a ranked
Absolutely.
beginner, like the modules online, whatever, chess.com, whatever platform you use, they have it as simple as how the pieces move,
Yeah.
right? You can do a module. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a grandmaster. If you're a beginner, you can do a module on how the pieces move. And if you're over 2000, you can do something on, combinations or the opening or something 10 moves deep, whatever it might be. I mean, there's puzzles and instructional material for players of all levels. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
just curious because with your experience as an educator and working with a lot of students, and I know you teach a lot, what have you noticed about all these new internet players and their transition to over the board
Yeah,
compared
it's
to in the
been a
past?
sure. It's been a big part of my chess life. First off, I was in a way one of the first of those. I mean, of course, I did read my chess books and stuff, but um, when I first started playing at the Nassau Chess Club in the late '80s, I guess it was. I had played a ton on the chess computers that were coming out then, the tabletops. But I also had been on what they call the Link Network. It was a very early. This was like maybe 1985 or something. Alan Cantor told me about the Nassau Chess Club, but I had so I came into the club with some experience, and I know a lot of the players were shocked at how good I was. I wish it could be I could say it's because I was so talented, but it wasn't that. It was that they were used to, if you hadn't played in a tournament before and you were unrated, you were like pretty bad, And I came in, I don't know. I think my provisional rating ended at 1825, and I think I was probably somewhere around that because I'd spent a lot of time on chess. It wasn't talent. I played against the computers. I played online. Of course, now it's gotten even, humongous. First of all, one thing I want to mention about that, there's a new type of strong player, which I think didn't exist before internet chess, speed chess, who's incredibly strong at speed chess. They might be like, 2,600 online or whatever it is, but that's pretty much all they do. They play like bullet all the time or blitz, and the skills you need to be good at that, which is generally your openings and you're good at spotting quick tactics and things like that. They're really good at, and they deserve their ratings. But they lack the things you don't need for that. So in other words, like deep calculation, being able to visualize really deeply, things like that. Even the opening to some extent, because you can get away with a lot of sort of superficial kind of even junk openings. If you're playing just bullet and 5 minute chess or whatever. Whereas again, if you're playing a serious tournament game, you might not be able to get away with it. So you have a new type of player, because it used to be you have, if someone's 2,400, 2,600, whatever they are, they're that strength. They might be a little weaker in one category or another, but for the most part, they're that strength. And if you are, if you're not, you're not. Whereas now you got this kind of mid-range player who, in certain ways, could be a master or higher strength player, but in other ways is much weaker. So, and I know when I play, because I'm kind of, I've come at kind of the middle of that. Like the players I played when I started out, computers and stuff weren't that strong, and there wasn't much online play. And the players who were masters back then, and some of them still play, they're real masters. They not that the others aren't, but they know the culture. They don't have any serious weaknesses. When I play other strong players who grew up on this, many of them are incredibly strong, and some of them are just good all around because there's so much you can do online. But some of them have like real holes in their game that just doesn't show up, because essentially what I would say the majority of them are doing, that are the strong players, they're doing tons of puzzles. I mean, there's an incredible number of puzzles. I do know some kids who have been like top of the nation at a very young age, and they're on those puzzle servers all the time. It's like an arcade game to them. They're playing a lot of Blitz, and they're looking over their openings with their Blitz. So now, they know their openings pretty well. Even myself, my openings have gotten better because I do spend time playing Blitz, and then I look up the opening afterwards. It is a good way to learn the openings, at least. So yeah, you could definitely become as, depending, like Akira Nakamura, he claims he didn't read many books, and I believe him. He basically got good playing a lot of Blitz, doing a lot of puzzles. I don't want to say exactly what he did, but it wasn't reading chess books, and it was mostly the type of things you do online. But then you have Magnus Carlsen, who's always read a lot of chess books. I think it comes down to, just again, what you enjoy most, what you're going to actually use. Just because you study books doesn't mean you can't be doing the other things that you do online. I mean, I certainly do both, and Magnus Carlsen certainly does. So I think books are good in that. So if you go on and you're just doing these computer puzzles like on chess.com and LHS, these are puzzles that the computer kind of found in games, and they're fine. You can get very good doing them. But if you look at a puzzle book, say by Agard, or you mentioned Ray Chang's book, who's very good. They're selected, by someone as, hey, this is instructive. Generally, someone who knows what they're doing, and you don't get that, with these kind of like random computer puzzles. So I would advise someone to do both. Nothing wrong with doing your LHS and chess.com puzzles, but if you get a good puzzle book, really puzzles though, I would say are the least important thing in terms of chess books, because online does do a pretty good job with that. I do like the fact that the levels, go up or down based on how you're doing. But other things in chess books, like a grandmaster explaining his thoughts, or in a game, you mentioned the seven deadly chess sins by Rawson. That's a great book for tournament players. So it depends. Again, like I always say, are you enjoying it? Are you motivated by it? If you're not enjoying and motivated by your study, then you're doing something wrong, and it probably would affect your results to some extent also. But if you hate chess books, yeah, you can do everything online and become, if you have the talent, as strong as you want to be, because it really is incredible stuff they have on there. And I use it. I'm not some advocate just for chess books. I use it. I'm generally, the first to know about all the chess sites, and I use them all the time. I love them.
Right. And the convenience you can't beat.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to be on your computer. You could do it on your phone, and you're
Yeah.
you're in the waiting room at the doctor's office. It's 20 minutes here. All those little spurts of time add up, like 20 minutes here, 10 minutes
Absolutely.
here. So, all right, Brian, I want to speak to you now a little bit about your teaching, and I'm going to throw a few ideas at you, and I'll let you take it in whatever direction you want. So I want to ask
Okay.
you about your private teaching approach and common amateur mistakes, and some advice for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
All that type of, all those types of ideas as far as instruction and improving. So I'll let you, like I said, I'll let you go in whatever direction you want with that.
Okay. Well, first off, it really depends. I think one of the most important things a teacher has to do is know what the goals of the student are, know what, if it's a young kid, know what the goals of the parents are. I know one coach, he insisted that his 6-year-old student played 2 games a week tournament chess, and needless to say, the parents didn't agree, and he lost the lesson, and it probably wouldn't have been good for the 6 year old. So you really have to know what is it that they want. Now, again, it can go in all sorts of directions. If they want their kid to become a really strong tournament player, you as a coach have to tell them also what that means. A lot. That's the other thing. A lot of parents, maybe to some extent kids, think you just hire a coach and they're going to show them some like secret curriculum, and all of a sudden they're going to go beat everyone. No, you're going to have to really put in some work at home, and be serious about it, even if you're a very young kid. So the parents have to know that. I know that the kid who won the this kid who became a 12-year-old grandmaster, Mishra, very impressive. He just did well in another tournament recently. His coach, again, a very impressive coach, I forget the name again, he had him doing 6 hours of chess a day in first grade. It's right there in the article. I had to read it twice. So, now, again, it's up to the parent. If the parent wants that, and in his case, it was a success. He did win the world championship for his age, and, he's gone on to become the youngest grandmaster ever. I personally speaking, as a parent, I wouldn't want that for my kids, particularly since the success isn't guaranteed. There's other kids who study a lot and they finish below Mishra. So, but again, as a parent, you have to figure out what your goals are. Are tournaments important? So I have other students, and a lot of them actually, they're doing chess in between karate and piano, and it's one of many activities they explore. And, and so that's a different type of student. So the student who I just described there, it'd be more about showing them why they should enjoy chess. Obviously you'd go for the games and the puzzles, but you'd also want to, captivate them about chess. Just like if you were teaching them piano or whatever else. And so you got to know what the goals are. That's very important. And I think the student himself has to know what his goal is in chess. What are they looking for? Of course, if they're a little kid, they probably won't know, and that's again where they need direction from a coach. Whereas an adult student, you assume that they know what they're doing if they're paying for lessons. You don't have to explain to them what chess is about, or even it's not even necessarily like a series of. It could be a high school student, could be a middle school student if they're mature enough. And then it's definitely focusing more on the improvement. Do they want to go to tournaments? Some do, some don't. If they do want to go to tournaments, then you're going to have a more serious approach. Like we could go into all the different types of things and all the stuff we've been talking about. Actually, are they going to because I keep notes on all my students, what works, what doesn't work. So if I have a student who I'm like, hey, he really enjoyed doing those puzzles on chess.com, right? Then I will, I'll say, all right, let's work on that. If I had another student who like going through games in a certain book, like Capablanca's 60 best endgames, then I'll work on that. And so that's what I think a coach has to do. He has to see what the student wants and then devise sort of a plan that the student will actually do, that'll help him accomplish his goals.
All right, Brian, that's great stuff. I want to thank you for being here. And if you want to contact Brian, his email is briankaren@usa.net. That's BRIANKAREN @usa.net. I'm going to put a link in the show notes, and if Brian wants to link to anything else, we'll include it there as well. But here he is, Brian Karen, candidate master, renowned chess educator, and my friend. We really appreciate it. You're our first guest for season 2. This was a great discussion. And as always, for those of you out there, I hope you win your next game. Have a great day.
Neil, thanks so much.
You got it, Brian.